you survived the pandemic in the United States of America, you got to see the government at its absolute worst. You also got to see the influence that various outsiders had on the government, including the various teachers' unions. They made things a lot worse, quite honestly, which was why I reacted with bewilderment and some amusement at the tweet of Randi Weingarten this week, the head of the American Federation of Teachers. She shared an article in the headline, "What's behind the increase in homeschooling?" To which many Twitter users responded, you, that's what's happening here. For more on this, I want to bring in Jon Schweppe. He's the Director of Policy and Government Affairs for the American Principles Project, and he joins us on the phone. Hello, John.
Hey, Vince. Thanks for having me.
Okay, so it is kind of amusing to me that Randi Weingarten is sharing articles to try and help explain why more people are homeschooling. Why do you think that is?
Yeah, I don't know if there's ever been a more appropriate use of the hot dog guy. We're all trying to figure out the person who did this. But no, the reality here is that, especially because of COVID, it woke a lot of parents up to seeing that the schools aren't really doing that good of a job. You have the indoctrination stuff, which obviously is a reason many conservative parents, including myself, are choosing homeschooling. But, you also have the learning loss. You have the fact that a lot of these parents got to see behind the curtain when the digital learning was happening and saw their kids twiddling their thumbs, scrolling TikTok because they weren't doing anything in class. And so I think a big part of the problem here is the racket is up, that parents are really starting to see that our public schools in this country are not doing a very good job at educating our kids.
Yes, and there are parents out there who are there's kind of a mix of things, as you're pointing out. There's the failure to educate the kids on the essentials, and then there's the propaganda. I've talked to homeschool parents who say, I had to get my kid out of the school system because they were being taught a bunch of things that our family doesn't even believe in. It's just horrifying. And that's a dangerous combination. And taxpayers are paying for that. These are government schools.
Well, a lot of these young kids, especially, coming out of teaching college, they are motivated. I love the way Tim Scott puts it, not to teach the ABCs, but to teach the CRTs. This is their worldview. And they really see it as important to, basically separate these kids from their parents' backwoods view of America. And obviously you see that stuff come across with the gender ideology. You see it with some of the race stuff. But you're even seeing, and we're seeing this now on TikTok, I think Lives of TikTok has posted a few things about this. These are folks advocating against Israel and for Hamas and some crazy, crazy stuff. So, again, parents are just not into that. They want to be able to have faith that their teachers, the vast majority of teachers are good, but as these activists really start to rise up in their ranks,
for sure,
it hurts the entire, idea of public schooling.
Well, yeah, and it only takes one teacher to mislead a child and lead to some very damaging consequences. This is what you're talking about, critical race theory and this twisted gender ideology, and a lot of this just teaches loathing, doesn't it? It teaches hatred. It teaches people to hate themselves, hate their bodies, for instance, in gender ideology. It teaches them to hate themselves perhaps because of their skin color, or to think of themselves as victims of a system because of their skin color. It teaches national loathing, where they have to resent America and its history. It's about instilling hatred in children, and that's how you destroy a country.
That's absolutely right. And really what you're seeing is American madrasas. It's just very strange to see it pointed at America itself. But I just find it so revealing. A lot of folks have talked about TikTok's role and pushing the pro-Hamas, pro-Al-Qaeda stuff here. But I really think the schools are a big part of it, because they're the ground that's really kind of setting this up to where kids are thinking, they're not having a conversation at home with their parents about Israel. They're having it at school. And then all of a sudden their parents find out their kids are Hamas sympathizers. And no wonder they're not necessarily excited about sending them to public school.
Yeah, I hadn't even contemplated that. What's the conversation like right now about all of these issues inside of so many schools across the country, especially in these left-wing districts? But it's not isolated to just the most left-wing school districts, is it, John?
No. This is something you think if you're in a red state or in a small town right now that you're safe. But a lot of these teachers, they're as I said, ideologically motivated. to really kind of separate kids from their parents' ideology. And so, they believe it's their job to educate kids about, the woke ideology. Maybe they aren't getting exposed to it enough at home. And, they'll couch this in red state communities and conservative communities. They'll couch this in liberalism, right? It'll be all about exposing them to new ideas and that sort of thing. It won't be as authoritarian, but it's still there. And folks need to be aware of that. You are not safe. If you're in a public school, you have woke teachers there. It's just a reality. And that's why these school board races, and that's why this pressure is so important.
Talk about homeschooling, if you will. How successful is it as a practice? What have parents discovered, especially parents who are doing it now since the pandemic? I've got more questions for you on this subject, but it seems to me that a lot of people are trying it for the first time.
Well, it depends. I know it's mixed results for some folks, but certainly the folks I've talked to, they're excited about how much you can do in a day. I think we've really kind of accepted the American school system where you have 8 hours and a lot of idle time for the kids. And, a lot of these homeschool parents are doing, okay, we're going to do 90 minutes of lessons and then do a field trip. And their kids are learning way more in a day than they would, in the public schools. So I think it's exciting. And, again, it's really important as you're raising kids to have that strong parent-kid relationship. And I think that's instilled when you do homeschooling. So I think it's a really good thing.
Now, Jon, we're talking to Jon Schweppe with the American Principles Project. Anytime something good begins to blossom in the United States, the left tries to figure out ways to snuff it out. How at risk do you think are homeschoolers and homeschooling parents to the left's appetites? I can easily envision, and in fact, I feel like I've seen stories where you have lefties who think that parents are doing something awful by trying to homeschool their kids and need to be taken out.
Well, they're going to really try to focus on the credentialing aspect and say that parents just aren't as qualified as teachers to teach history or math or whatever. And that's obviously a bunch of bunk. A lot of kids are learning how to read at home, not really in the school, right? And so I think parents need to give themselves a little bit more credit. But that is the strategy. I mean, they're gonna come up with some stories about abuse. They're gonna come up with a lot of backwoods religious conservatives so they can kind of demonize it.
Yes.
But they want to basically use their credentialing system to say that parents are not experts in parenting, and so they shouldn't do it.
Also, like in my house, I send my kid to Catholic school, but in my house, like my kid teaches me things occasionally from just stuff she's read. Like she's in fourth grade. She'll read some random science article and then she'll be telling me about it. So for parents, it's not just that parents need to know everything. They just need to have good, trusted resources they can rely on that they can share with their children so that they can learn.
Yeah, I think so. And the thing about homeschoolers that we've run into is, you always have that conversation after school with your kid of, hey, what'd you learn today? Nothing.
Yeah.
And with homeschool, you're always having conversations with your kids about all sorts of things in the world. And I think it's a really good thing.
That's true. And then you can reflect on those in real life, practical applications, because now you were a part of that lesson. And that weekend when you encounter something that has to do with it, you say, hey, remember when we were talking about this? This is exactly how it works. Or you see something in the news, it creates a much more holistic learning experience, I'd imagine.
It does, and I think it sets kids up for going out into the real world later and being armed with a conscience, armed with, sincerely held beliefs, to where once they do run into these woke ideas, they're able to counter them and call a spade a spade. And yes. I think, one of the things is if you're sending a kindergartner to public school, their conscience isn't fully formed yet. It's really difficult to even ask them to do that. So that's why I think it's really important, whether you're doing your private school, homeschool, or even if you just are making sure that your public school is teaching the right things, you got to guard those minds early. Otherwise, that's when you lose.
Yeah, and that's another critical component here, which is the moral education. At the moment, it's just so unfortunate here in the United States that you have a lot of strangers who are preying on your children, and some of them, unfortunately, are in the schools. And as you stipulated earlier, we're not talking about the majority of teachers here. Majority of the teachers out there that I've met are people, good, earnest people who want to educate children well. But if you get enough in there, just a few, who can really upset the apple cart and take advantage of these children, it creates national chaos. So that moral education, what parents can instill at home, is critical, and it really gives the kids who go to these homeschool experiences, who stay at home to learn, a real advantage, I think, in terms of just helping create a better country.
Yeah, I think so. And again, things have changed in 20 years. I was a public school kid. I remember, looking at homeschool families, kind of with a strange eye, like, is that really like beneficial?
Yeah.
But, I think especially as this country becomes more divided, as you said, and as you have some bad actors, teachers who really want to teach your kids to hate America or to identify as a different gender or whatever, I mean, you got to protect them. That's what this is about. That's what the parental rights movement has been about. And homeschooling is a critical component of that.
Yeah, the other piece is, I too looked back on homeschoolers. I went to a variety of schools growing up, being in a military family. I went to the government schools. I went to Catholic schools. I tried it all. My parents, every time we moved, it was something else. But the homeschoolers we met, I feel like I remember that one, they were typically way brighter than everybody else, which was weird as a kid. You're like, like they're out of our league. Like we couldn't even talk to some of them. It was amazing. The other piece, though, is I kind of thought, well, this is weird. They spend all their time just alone with their parents, and they don't socialize as much. But that's not actually true. These homeschool students, they've got social experiences because there's homeschool parents who get together, and the students do the field trips, and they do social events, and they do sports. So this is all considered and factored in, isn't it, John?
Yeah, obviously it's different in different areas, and there aren't the resources in some areas. But certainly here in Northern Virginia, there's all these homeschool co-ops. I mean, there's just all sorts of things to do. You can't, get enough of it. And so I think as this grows across the country, you're going to see more of that. Parents banding together, even specializing, right? Like, I would feel probably out of place teaching science, but, give me history, give me English, sure, let's do it. And I think that's what a lot of parents are doing too. And it's working. I mean, The reality is that we're better at teaching our kids than we think. We should probably try to do it.
John, are you hopeful about the direction of education in the country? Obviously, the pandemic was a wake-up call to a lot of parents, as we're discussing. Do you see things changing? You've got some states that are pursuing school choice, allowing parents to pick up and move to a different school and bring that money with them. And then, of course, you've got homeschooling, which is definitely on the rise. Are things headed in the right direction?
Look, I think competition via school choice definitely helps. I think citizen oversight of curriculum via school boards, via state elections certainly helps. But I have to be honest, Vince. I mean, this is why I'm homeschooling, hoping to eventually do Catholic schooling. It's a total vote of no confidence for me in the public school system right now, just because of the stories we're hearing, just because of the horrible videos we're seeing on Twitter, where you just have kids getting absolutely beat up and there's no one there to support them. So, I know that those are horror stories, but I think that's how a lot of parents are feeling right now is, we love our kids. We don't want to put them in a horrible situation. And unfortunately, public schools seem like, in a lot of cases, they aren't good.
Yeah. Look, we'll know it's all fixed when a parent can send their kid on the bus and know that the school will be flying the American flag and not a left-wing pride flag. That's when you'll be back to recognizing the school system. But right now, it's crazy out there, and there's honestly, it's weird to say this, but they are after your kids, aren't they, John?
They are. It's a weird ideology, but that's they don't have enough kids themselves, so they really have to convert ours.
Good
so
point.
That's why you got to protect it.
Jon Schweppe with the American Principles Project. Thanks for always being on the right side of the fight. Good to talk to you, sir.
Hey, thanks for having me, Vince.